So you thought the light attack changes were bad. This is like significantly worse. It's honestly the death of Cyrodiil if this goes ahead in my eyes, and potentially the Elder Scrolls Online. Hey, it's Dan, and welcome back to Unified Gaming. I want to level with you straight from the get-go. I have tried to record this video multiple times. Each time I do it, I get more and more frustrated. It's just the changes are ludicrous, and so I really want to go through in this one and kind of show you what's been said by ZOS themselves, Rich Lambert in particular, the creative director. He said this on the 27th of July 2020 to give you some context, and what he's saying makes a lot of sense, but it's the execution is the problem. And so I want to go through and give you my thoughts on it, throw my hat in the ring, but more importantly, give you kind of a way to just express how you feel. Comment on the video, comment on the forum, so ZOS knows exactly what you think, because I honestly am concerned for the state of the game. These changes will basically turn it into World of Warcraft 2.0 without the fun. So let's just get straight into it, and hopefully ZOS will have some new solutions as what they could do, because I'm all about finding ways to fix a problem. As part of ongoing performance optimizations, we have been spending a lot of time analysing and addressing the problems in Cyrodiil. I'm going to give you a summary of what has happened over the years, what has been done kind of to alleviate this, and the future plans. Brilliant, I absolutely love that. Then you read the rest of it. When talking about ESO server performance, it is important to understand that all abilities in the game, with some exceptions, have a soft limit on the number of times they can be executed. As an example, a hard limit on an ability is an ability that can be executed once every 2 seconds, and that's enforced by the server. ESO doesn't do this. Instead, the game's been designed to have soft limits, which means you can use as many abilities as you like, as long as you have the stamina or magicka to do so. There is a global cooldown as well of 1 second. So that kind of is what we have so far. Now what he gets at, and he's right, there is issues with AoEs and lags, completely agree with that, just the execution as I've said. The design goal of the soft limits in any game is to allow players to create builds that let them execute abilities more often depending on build choices, and not to have hard ceilings on damage or healing per second. This gives a lot of control to the player, which makes for a really fun and interesting system, but it can lead to situations where players cast too many abilities too quickly and continuously if strict limits are not enforced. And that's kind of what they're getting at, is that people are spamming abilities, AoEs especially, and that makes lag. So understandable, ball groups cause lag. They've then said that over the past few years, the player power has grown with champion systems, armor sets, changes to abilities, and they've kind of got to a point where if you've got the right build, you can basically sustain infinitely and cast as much as you like. And if you're in the right kind of group, you then have some people focusing just on damage, others on healing, and all of the regen boosts and stuff means you can just spam these abilities without stopping, and this causes issues. With that in mind, consider how AoE effects work. When you cast, they look for a specific target, almost always in the area around the caster. They find the target and perform the ability. Each of these requires a calculation from the processor on the server. So basically when you use an AoE, there's like 3 checks it has to go through at least, and if it's an AoE with a heal over time, for example, or damage over time, it's got more and more calculations to check. At launch, Cyrodiil's processors were able to keep up with the number of AoEs cast, because most players couldn't cast many of them, they were expensive, they ran out of magic or stamina. So they had to kind of use them now and again sporadically, kind of when appropriate. Over time though, players' knowledge grew and regen builds grew in power, more players could cast more and more AoEs before running out of resources. Now there's quite a few things wrong with this here. As players' knowledge grew, basically people got better at the game, and now they're being penalised for that firstly. They then talk about that actually people get more power with CP and stuff earlier up, yet they give you kind of all of that because of, you know, just trying to sell DLCs, increase the CP cap, make really strong sets. So a lot of these issues kind of do really feel as if it's kind of self-inflicted in all honesty, and that does sound harsh, but there are solutions. So like, kind of, let's see what else they say. During these years, we found and fixed many performance issues in Cyrodiil, and we continue to do so. We fixed significant issues, uncovered more, and continue to fix with every update. That's questionable. If you were on stream last Saturday, obviously it's on Twitch, the performance in Cyrodiil was abysmal, like so bad. So I wouldn't say they fix every update. It's really, really troublesome currently. However, one foundational issue remains. At some point, we crossed a threshold where most players in PvP were able to cast endless AoE abilities without ever running out of resources. This is done through player knowledge, builds, and group mechanics, resulting in a constant stream of AoEs with many players never using any other type of ability. Again, this just is self-inflicted. They crossed the threshold because they gave people more CP, which means they had more sort of regen, and they could spam skills a bit more freely. They then came up with really crazy sets to sell DLCs, which means they could spam abilities freely. And I don't think they addressed the issue at the heart with, time to kill. People are staying alive too long, thus they got the time to keep those abilities up. Healing's too high, health's too high, armor's too high, so I'm just, I don't feel this is the right way. I've got solutions. Let's see what they plan though, because it's honestly hilarious. This is not what we intended, but part of the fun of the Elder Scrolls games is designing a build that has unexpected and powerful results, and we allowed it. Great, that's why I love ESO. Like, making strong, crazy, wacky builds is the fun of the game. However, as this behaviour grew more prevalent, we reached a point where casting so many continuous AoE abilities in such a small area started to overwhelm the server process for that area, leading to situations where the lag meter spikes and the server becomes unresponsive for a period of time. So basically, the little hamster, he needs a break now and again, and unfortunately people are spamming AoEs and the hamster doesn't get a break, so that is the problem. It just seems like, if you upgrade the servers, that might be the solution, and I get that's possibly not the way they can do it, so let's see what they say and see what their solutions are. Our initial response to this problem, starting with update 22, was to find and fix more than a few problems with AoE ability calculations and make them more sort of performant. And we sort of stayed mostly ahead of the problem. I stayed ahead of the problem. No, that's not the case. But as more players reached maximum champion level and more players started utilising this particular method of AoE spamming, we have reached the point where we cannot fix this issue around the edges, and we need to address the core problem, which we will start in update 27, so next patch. Now this is the juicy stuff, guys, and I'm going to read it first, let you make your own thoughts on it, and I'm going to tell you what I think, okay, because to do this, we will need to first do some analysis. We can only do this on live servers. As much as we try to avoid running tests on live servers, they're the only place where the combination of player behaviour, specific builds and mass battles happen. So starting the week of August 24th, we'll be running a series of tests on the live PC servers, NA and EU, only in Cyrodiil. Please note, we will not be running these tests on any console server, and each test should take about a week, but if needed, we will extend the testing time. So console guys, sorry you can't do it, but if you want to obviously see what it looks like, then obviously subscribe to the channel. I will be putting live gameplay up, and do check out our Twitch. The first round of tests we are planning will focus on area of effect abilities in Cyrodiil, and will make it more difficult for AoE abilities to be the only abilities used, adjusting cooldowns, cost, and regen values of all AoEs, damage and healing. Now I'm going to jump to the patch notes and just show you kind of a bit more clarity, which was in there, not in this kind of post. As we discussed in this post, so this one here, AoE abilities, this is what they're kind of looking for. Abilities which meet the following criteria have been flagged for being subject to this test. The ability's initial cast requires a radius to function. This includes abilities like Breath of Life that require a radius check to fire its heal at the appropriate target. If an ability is single target ability and has an area component attached to it, so blast bones would also be affected. So you kind of get an idea, it's quite a big sort of range, but we'll go through that in a moment. So for the tests. Test 1, shared global AoE cooldown 3-second timer. This test has a global cooldown shared between all AoE abilities. This means when you cast an AoE, you will not be able to cast another for 3 seconds. For example, as a Templar, if I cast Ritual of Retribution, I will not be able to cast Puncher and Sweeps for 3 seconds. Yep, you heard that correctly. As a Templar, if I cast Ritual of Retribution or the Cleanse, I can't use jabs. And also, if you use Puncher and Sweep, you can't use it again for 3 seconds. We'll touch upon that in a moment. Test 2. Individual AoE cooldown, 3-second timer. This test adds an individual AoE cooldown to each ability. This means that when you cast an AoE, you will not be able to cast the same AoE for 3 seconds. For example, as a Templar, if I cast Puncher and Sweeps, I wouldn't be able to cast Puncher and Sweeps again for 3 seconds. So test 1 is, if you cast any AoE skill, you can't cast another one for 3 seconds. Test 2, if you cast Sweeps, you can't cast Sweeps, but you could cast Cleanse. You could cast another AoE skill. So that's how that works. Test 3, no cooldown, global ramping AoE cost. This test adds a global ramping AoE cost for AoE cast. Similar to how Streak or Roll Dodge works, where when you cast an AoE, you receive a debuff for 5 seconds. Each stack of the debuff increases the cost of any AoE cast. So you now have Streak AoE basically cost on the AoE cast skill. So spam jabs, you're going to spend more on more magicka or stamina using it. Noxious Breath, Engulfing Flames. There are loads of skills, we'll go through those in a moment. Test 4, individual AoE cooldown, 3-second timer, global ramping AoE cost. So this basically combines like test 2 and test 3 into one. So it adds an individual AoE cooldown to each ability like test 2, but each time you use it, you also get a cost increase as well. So that's their tests, and they're being generous, I think, that they're going to give you double AP for playing Cyrodiil during these events, during like these tests. So, as you can probably tell, I am not in favour of these tests whatsoever. If you are unaware, they are basically going to do these tests, and what it says down here, if the test proves what they are looking for, that chain casting AoE abilities kind of cause the lag, then that will no longer be a thing in PvP, and they will have to adjust things. So basically, if these show that, look, the lag is caused by people spamming AoEs, we're going to change all the AoEs and all the skills, so you can't do that anymore. The code for these changes will be applied to the PTS today, and they'll be running some basic tests throughout the day, so it can be working in Cyrodiil on the live server. They did say that it will not work in Imperial City or Battlegrounds, so you can PvP there safely and there's no risk. And they will evaluate and change and let people know kind of how this goes. This is really important for the team, and they really want people to help with them. And they're like thankful people are being patient. So, what does this all mean? Really, what do I think about this? Well, to really give it context, let's just show you the list of skills that are affected. I have been sent a link to an article from somebody else who's kind of compiled a list of all of the AoE skills in the game. They're put into classes, there's a few typos, but this is what they've found that's considered AoE, just looking at the skills. And we're going to again touch upon kind of what classes would be impacted by this, okay? So, AoE skills, Engulfing Flames, Flames of Oblivion, Cauterize, Volatile Armor, Choking Talons, Deep Breath, Draw Essence, Eruption, Stone Giant. I've highlighted 1, 2, 3, 4 skills for Magicka DK that would be in almost any kit. If you're playing a DK, you have most of these skills as a Magicka DK. As a Stam DK, you probably have Noxious Breath, Cauterize, Volatile Armor. So you've got a good 3 skills minimum, maybe 4 if you use Stone Giant. With the changes coming in Stonethorn, some Magicka DKs might even use Deep Breath or Draw Essence. Again, that's another skill with a delay on it or a cost increase. So Magicka DK will be impacted quite heavily by this. And that's just one class. 3 or 4 of your abilities are going to be hit with either a delay on them or a cost increase per cast, which is nuts. And that's just one class. That's not weapon skills, class, world skill lines, guild skill lines. Let's look at the Necromancer. Scythe, totems, dead in pain, so when you get the corpses consumption thing, ghostly embrace, which is the new stun, you can't spam it now, the skull, blast bones, boneyard, arcanist, so the little skeleton pet, the siphon, mystic siphon, your heal, resistant flesh, or the AoE that heals other people, renewing undeath or enduring undeath, that's a really good heal by the way, the spirit guardian, mortal coil, braided tether. So as a necromancer, most of your skills will be impacted, and let's see what you would actually use. Magicka necromancer, you might try ghostly embrace now, you might try that. You would definitely be running stalking blast bones, you might run boneyard, you might run skeletal arcanist, but probably not. You'll definitely run either resistant flesh or a heal. You'd run an intensive mender. You might even run mortal coil if you could. It could be spirit guardian instead. So you've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 skills that you could probably use in PvP quite easily would be impacted by this change, and that's just Magicka. Stamina, you might use Scythe, it's unlikely, but some people use Dead and Pain, some would use Blast Bones, you'd have to. Some might use Detonate and Siphon, not often, but I've seen a few. You do see some people use Mortal Coil, and they definitely use Spirit Guardian. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 5 if you add in this, if you do use it. That's a lot of skills impacted by this change for just one class, and that's no weapon skill lines. Lotus Fan, you can see like it goes on and on. With Sorcerer, it's even worse. Your curses are impacted, your pets are impacted, your shields are impacted, your roots, your dark deals, your Daedric tombs, your mines, your execute, your armor buff, your streak, so your mobility. Templars got exactly the same issues. Jabs, the stuns, the wards, the reflective light, the dark flare, the solar barrage, the purifying light, the heals. You could just see how many wardens exactly the same. Deep Fissure, Swarm, the hills, Leeching Vines, Trellis, Nature's Embrace, the armor buff, Polar Wind, Arctic Blast, Crystal Slab, 2H, Stampede, Carve, Brawler, Reverse Slice, Sword and Board, Deep Slash, Heroic Slash, Whirling Blade, Still Tornado, Quick Cloak, Deadly Cloak, Shrouded Daggers, Endless Hail, Arrow Barge. You can see the skills that are impacted go on and on and on and on, and it is so many that you have real issues with just what could you actually use that's not impacted. Like, this is a massive list of skills, and there's probably some missing. So what's wrong with this? What's wrong with all of these changes? Firstly, they need to give a list like this, make a specific list. These are the skills that will be impacted, so every player knows, because this is what's been sent. It's been compiled by a player, but it could be wrong. But most of the skills looking at this, there's nothing I'm thinking, oh no, that wouldn't be. Maybe the shields, but so I do think that actually they need to make a list firstly, just to tell people what's going to be impacted straight away, so they know from the get-go. That's job 1. Job 2, make the rewards better. The rewards are terrible. Like, if you want to test this, which is fine, test stuff absolutely fine, but respond to what people say. If they don't like it, don't do it. But these rewards here, why would you PvP? Like, why would I want to go into PvP as a Magicka Dragon Knight and I can't use 4 or 5 of my skills properly just to get double AP? When I'm going to go against a Nightblade that can use all of their skills correctly, I'm at a huge disadvantage. So the double AP points, all you're going to end up having is either people switch to classes that are not impacted, so then you'll see less of these AoE skills used, or people won't play PvP at all and they'll just play Battlegrounds or Imperial City, or people just won't play at all. So you end up going to have less players in PvP, which will improve lag regardless, because there's less people. You're going to have people avoiding using these skills because they're just going to be really awkward to use. And it's because of the rewards are terrible. If they could track if you use an AoE skill and you get bonus AP or crown crates or something, then that would help. You need a way to encourage people to get into PvP in the first place. PvP for 1 hour and you get, a crate. You could be capture 3 keeps, get 1 crown crate. Something like that would encourage people to go in and actually try it. Then you can encourage them by using these skills. So you need to go, okay, if you use an AoE skill, you get 10% more AP. That way people get a material reward, which they like, pets and all that stuff. For capturing keeps, you encourage people to go in because they would have to spend money on this. And it's just, it's a loot box. It's not a real item. There's no real money lost because they probably wouldn't buy it in the first place. But you at least get people to test it. That's really important. That's the first issue I see with this. Obviously, I'd rather this just isn't a thing. Cast times, dreadful for the game. Worst change they could think of. There are way better ways to do it. Cost increases, again, not a good idea. My concern I have, and if you are listening, Zoz, this makes no sense. There are games like Warframe that had exactly the similar system where PvP and PvE had different rules, and it was really confusing for players. Imagine a brand new player picks up this game. They get to level 10, they go in Battlegrounds. As a Templar, they can use their sweeps absolutely fine. No cost increase, no penalties. They go into PvE land and they kill stuff with sweeps absolutely fine. They go to Cyrodiil. I can't use my skill anymore. I can't use it. Or it's costing me more resources. I'm running out of stats. It's going to be really confusing for them. So my concern is that if they put these in Cyrodiil, would they not then consider putting it in PvE as well to just standardise the game to go, actually, you know what, this works in Cyrodiil, it's reduced the lag here, and it's going to reduce the lag in PvE, we're going to add it, it'll make trials less laggy, it'll make overland less laggy, people can play in events, it's a win-win-win. When actually the reality is, combat is slower, the game is less fun, and that is not good. The amount of content creators I've spoken to, like Is There No One Else, Sedan, Kyoki, ESO, the list goes on and on and on, and just other players in my Discord. I have not come across a single person that likes the way they're doing this. Everybody I spoke to says yes, the lag needs fixing completely, but adding timers, skill costs, it's just not intuitive, it's confusing for players, it doesn't help. Not having a list of skills will not help this situation. And on top of all of that, I think that actually what they are doing is kind of missing the root cause of the issue. AoEs is kind of a symptom of a bigger problem. They're kind of treating the symptom and not the root cause. The root cause is big groups stay alive too long. That is the problem. If they were dead, they can't cast these skills. It's pretty simple. They need to give ways to try and find ways for people to kill larger groups, and I've got a few suggestions which I think could really help. First and foremost, limit the group size in PvP to 12, like you do in trials. It will make sense. You go from big group in trials to big group in Cyrodiil, it's the same number. People would understand that a bit easier, so it just makes a bit more clarity. And then you make it so that you can only heal people in your group. So that way the check is only done on 12 people rather than all the people in the area. That will really help, and Fengrush has been calling for this for ages, and I think it's a really good idea. The second thing, which obviously I don't think many people has mentioned, but it's the damage ones. So if you go down to things like Endless Hail, which is down here, or Blockade of Storms, for example. The issue with these kind of skills is that they tick very frequently, and they're AoE. And I get that having lots of AoEs ticking will cause issues. So what you could do is change these skills, not to make them worse, but to basically measure the DPS. If this skill does 1000 damage every second for 5 seconds, that is 5000 damage. If it was 2000 for 5 seconds, it's 10,000 damage. So if we say in 5 seconds this skill does 10,000 damage, what you could then do is spread the damage out. The initial hit will do 3000, the final hit will do 2000. If the hit damage over time is say 10 seconds, you could do it as initial hit 5 second, 5 second, so you get 3 hits rather than 6 or 7 little ticks, and make the bigger hits do more damage. That would spread out the load over a couple of seconds, and it wouldn't affect PvE because it'll get the same DPS because you've just made each hit harder. And then to kind of really address the oh, but I might miss my status proc, you just increase the status chance on those skills. That way, those damage AoEs, it means that those damage AoEs will be really good in PvP, and it would also help the bigger groups, because if you've got an AoE ability that will hit harder on the initial hit, you've got a better chance of killing more people, and that gives smaller groups and other bigger groups a chance of killing one another. That would really help. So I think you need to just give more ways to kill other bigger groups so they're not alive as often. And I think Siege was a really good change. A while back there was a bug with it where Siege was really, really powerful, and it basically one-shotted most people, which was a bit overtuned, but it did mean that people couldn't sit in one area and just out-heal it. I see people on live now, literally a big group could sit in a meat bag and a scatter shot, and they just spam like Radiating Region on each other and Echoing Vigor, and they just out-heal the damage. Siege does not do enough damage anymore. I would instead have Siege Shield have the 3-second timer. That's just one skill, people could live with that, and then make it so that Siege does more damage. That would be a really easy fix. And I think, you know, a really big issue with all of this is the I do not die builds, the unkillable builds. If you look at the kind of average health bar in PvP, I do have the, you know, luxury of playing on Xbox and on PC, that I've kind of seen console and PC. The average health bar over the years has gone up and up and up, as well as the armor and the resistances and the mitigation. So all that's happened is basically people have more health to get through, so they take more time to kill, they take less damage, which again means they take more time to kill, and they can be healed by other people really, really high because of high cross healing, so they take more time to kill. What we now have is really high health builds with high armor. The healing's hit and miss, but when there's loads of people healing, it's actually fine. So you kind of have this situation where people just stay alive too long to cast these skills that you're moaning about. So wouldn't it be more logical to think, actually, let's lower the health pools, or have like after X amount of health you get a diminishing return, so you can't just have 40, 50, 60k health and just spam Radiating Region, because Polar Wind is a really bad example, because, you know, it's a hill based on health. You can have a tank build that's unkillable, spamming that hill, which will just add server load, and it can't be killed. There are loads of builds like that that have very similar mechanics in groups, where they just have too much bulk. They can't be one-shotted by a 1vx player, or just, you know, in a one-on-one, because the health bar's too high. The damage isn't high enough, even with a glass cannon spec, and they can just out-heal it, which means you need 2 or 3 people to coordinate and to land the damage to kill them. And when there's multiple people, that is really hard, which kind of brings me to my next point, that if you really want to try and improve this and try and avoid these, you know, these solutions, which seem ill thought in all honesty, change the tabbed system. One of the big issues with big group fights is that you can't land the damage on the person that you need consistently and reliably. So if I start to attack somebody and they move behind somebody else, the other person body blocks and I can't hit them anymore. This is really true for pets. So if you're fighting a pet sorcerer, they've got 2 or 3 things in the way. You can't kill the person spamming the skills. If you made it where that tab lock, you know, you tab targeting, means that all your skills are direct at that target as long as they're within range, whether there's somebody between you or not, that'll be easier to use, and be a bit more generous with the auto lock on, especially on console. There is a difference between console and PC. And I think that would really help just allow people to land single target skills, because that's one of the issues that you have, that people are really high health, high armor, so they can't be killed easily, and then you can't even land the skills on them consistently because people get in the way. So I think making that targeting system just more reliable would really, really help. I definitely think though, as they've kind of said, there was issues with the server, with the processor, and they need to reduce the calculations. This year has really shown they've tried to do that. They've added cast times to ultimates. They tried to do the light and heavy attack changes, which again would reduce weaving, thus calculations. They then tried to mess around with animation cancel and block, which would reduce the amount of time people push block and activate another action. They've then changed bash, so people don't need to bash because the damage is really poor. They're now trying to change AoE skills. Like, they're changing things patch on patch on patch, trying to improve performance because the server cannot keep up with the demand. Now, is that because they just need a better server? They need better hardware? I don't know. But what I do know from playing the game and from running servers before in other games, Minecraft for example, is when there's more stuff loaded and there's more players acting, there's just more calculations. Imperial City, from my experience, even in big events, it's not that laggy because people are put into smaller bubbles or pockets, districts basically. So wouldn't it be wise to kind of have that style for Cyrodiil, where the milestone gates, those checkpoints, are load screens, or they take you from one instance to another instance. So then that way you can minimize the lag into specific parts rather than all of Cyrodiil's lag. It's maybe by areas, maybe it's by bleakers. So you can just kind of really narrow where the lag is, rather than people could be fighting in Drakelow and I could be down in sort of AD bases and I'm being hit with like mad lag because of people up there. So I think just limiting that and making it into smaller regions while still part of the same campaign would make life a lot easier. But again, that takes lots of work. So I don't know what you guys think. Like, there's loads of solutions there. I've given them a good 5 or 6 solutions that could help reduce the load on the server. And I do not want to see this 3-second timer. If this 3-second timer comes in, this will be the death of PvP in the game. It will be confusing for players. And as you see, there's so many skills that will be impacted by this. So in all honesty, they need to really think long and hard about this and think, is this the best way of balancing it? And I don't think it is. But I've gone on long enough about it. I'd love to know what you guys think. Obviously, post a comment, but more importantly, get your voice heard. Go to the forums, reply to this post, make a new post if you have to, comment on my video, just anywhere where you can express your voice, because that's the only way Zos will listen. Don't be sat in a Discord, be messaging a friend on Facebook and not actually making Zos aware of it. They can't check those things. So as I said, post on the forums, comment on this video. I'll be obviously putting more stuff about this and following this very closely. So if you want to stay up to date with all of this and kind of what this looked like in PvP during these tests, then obviously subscribe. But with that said, guys, I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thanks for watching. It's a lot longer than normal. It's a bit more sort of ranting, more rambly, but I really had to kind of get this off my chest and just really express how concerned I am as a content creator with these changes. I'll catch you in the next video, so thanks for watching, take care, and bye.